The silent prisoner Captain James Morrison had seen plenty of dangerous creatures in his 20 years aboard the research vessel Prometheus. But nothing had prepared him for the being in cell block 7. The creature sat motionless in the center of the reinforced containment unit, its pale blue skin almost translucent under the harsh fluorescent lights. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the station's xenobiologist, had classified it as a Category 9 threat after it had disabled 3 security drones. During capture, "It hasn't moved in 6 hours, whispered Technician Cole Rivers, adjusting the monitoring equipment. No eating, no sleeping, no nothing, just sitting there like a statue. Morrison nodded grimly. The alien had been captured after its ship crash-landed on the mining planet Kepler 442b. The vessel had been completely destroyed, leaving only this lone survivor. Standard protocol demanded immediate containment until they could determine its intentions and capabilities. "Sir," Cole continued, his voice dropping even lower, "there's something else. Yesterday, when I was running diagnostics, I swear it looked right at me, not just in my direction, but at me, like it was studying me." The captain dismissed the concern with a wave. "You're imagining things, Rivers. It's probably in shock from the crash. Keep monitoring and report any changes." But Cole wasn't imagining things. The alien, who had been listening to every word through the intercom system, understood their language perfectly. It had been learning, observing, and waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The creature possessed intelligence far beyond what these humans suspected, and it had been using its time in captivity to study their behavior, their routines, and most importantly, their nature. As the days passed, strange incidents began occurring around the containment area. Tools would be found arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Security cameras would mysteriously malfunction for exactly 37 minutes each day. Most puzzling of all, books from the station's library began disappearing, only to reappear in the ventilation system near the alien cell. Dr. Kane grew increasingly frustrated with the security breaches. "How is it getting these books?" she demanded during a heated meeting with Morrison. "The containment field is still active, the cell is sealed, and we have guards posted around the clock." "Maybe it's not taking them," suggested Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, stroking his graying beard thoughtfully. "Maybe someone's bringing them to it." The idea seemed preposterous, but Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that Webb might be onto something. He decided to review the security footage personally, spending hours watching the monotonous recordings of the alien cell. That's when he saw it. In the early hours of the morning, when the night shift was at its most tired, the alien would stand and approach the ventilation grate. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, as it carefully extracted books that had been placed there by unseen hands. The creature would then return to its sitting position and begin reading, turning pages with the deliberate care of a scholar. Morrison's blood ran cold. Not only was the alien intelligent enough to read human text, but someone on his crew was helping it. The cage they thought contained a dangerous beast was actually housing a student, and they had unknowingly become its teachers. The first words, the revelation that the alien could read, changed everything aboard the Prometheus. Captain Morrison called an emergency meeting with his senior staff, the tension in the briefing room thick enough to cut with a knife. Dr. Kane paced nervously, while Chief Webb sat in stunned silence, still processing the implications. "We need to identify who's been feeding it books," Morrison stated firmly. "This is a serious breach of protocol that could compromise the entire station." "Maybe we're looking at this wrong," interrupted Dr. Kane suddenly. "If it's intelligent enough to read, perhaps we should try to communicate with it directly." Webb shook his head. "Too dangerous. We don't know what it's capable of. For all we know, it's been studying our weaknesses." Morrison decided to take a different approach. Instead of hunting for the mysterious book supplier, he would confront the alien directly. Armed with only a translator device and his sidearm, he entered the containment area alone. Against the protests of his crew, the alien sat in its usual position, but this time it held a book in its elongated hands. As Morrison approached, the creature slowly lifted its head, revealing eyes that seemed to hold the depth of ancient wisdom. "You can understand me, can't you?" Morrison asked, his voice echoing in the sterile chamber. The alien's response came, not as words, but as a gentle placement of the book on the floor between them. Morrison could see the title, The Philosophy of Human Ethics by Dr. Nathaniel Cross. "Fascinating choice," the alien spoke, its voice clear and melodious, causing Morrison to take an involuntary step backward. "Your species writes extensively about moral behavior, yet your actions often contradict your written ideals." Morrison's hand instinctively moved to his weapon, but something in the alien's posture stopped him. There was no threat here, only curiosity. "What are you?" Morrison asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am Kefna, philosopher and seeker of truth from the world you call Proxima 7. I came to your system not as an invader, but as a student. My ship's failure was unfortunate." The simple honesty in Kefna's words hit Morrison like a physical blow. They had been holding a scholar prisoner, treating him like a dangerous animal based on fear and assumption. "The books," Morrison said, "someone's been bringing them to you." Kefna's expression seemed to shift, though the alien features were hard to read. "Young Rivers possesses a curious mind. He began leaving texts after observing my interest in your written word. He asks no questions, seeks no answers, but simply ... provides." Morrison felt a mix of anger and admiration for his technician. Rivers had violated direct orders, but he had also recognized intelligence where others saw only threat. "What do you want from us?" Morrison asked. "To understand," Kefna replied simply. "Your species confuses me. You create beautiful art, write profound philosophy, and demonstrate remarkable compassion. Yet you also wage wars, destroy your environment, and imprison those who are different. I seek to comprehend this contradiction." Over the following days, Morrison found himself returning to the containment area regularly. What began as interrogations slowly transformed into discussions. Kefna would share observations about human behavior, while Morrison found himself defending and explaining his species' actions. The aliens' questions were penetrating and often uncomfortable. "Why do you create weapons capable of destroying your entire world? How can you write about universal brotherhood while maintaining racial divisions? What drives humans to exploration when you have not yet mastered living peacefully with each other?" These conversations began to change Morrison's perspective not just on their prisoner, but on humanity itself. He started seeing his own actions and decisions through alien eyes, recognizing patterns he had never noticed before. Dr. Kane, initially skeptical of the communication attempts, became fascinated by Kefna's insights into human psychology. She began joining the conversations, bringing her own questions about alien society and culture. "We do not have your concept of ownership," Kefna explained during one session. "Knowledge, like air and water, belongs to all. The idea of keeping wisdom locked away is ... puzzling to us." The irony wasn't lost on Morrison. Here they were, keeping the most profound teacher they had ever encountered, locked behind energy barriers and reinforced walls. The philosophy lessons, word of the aliens' intelligence spread through the Prometheus like wildfire. Despite Morrison's attempts to keep the communications classified, crew members began finding excuses to walk past the containment area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature they now knew could think and speak. Dr. Kane formally requested permission to establish regular communication sessions with Kefna for research purposes. Morrison agreed, recognizing that they were dealing with a first contact situation unlike anything in their protocols. The sessions became daily events, with Kane, Morrison, and occasionally other crew members gathering to discuss philosophy, science, and the nature of existence with their alien guest. Kethna proved to be an exceptional teacher, offering perspectives that challenged every assumption that humans held about life, consciousness, and society. Your species has an interesting relationship with time, Kethna observed during one session. You measure it, divide it, and constantly worry about wasting it. Yet you rarely live fully in the present moment. Chief Webb, who had initially been the most skeptical about the aliens' presence, found himself drawn into these discussions. How do your people view time? He asked. We see it as a river, Kethna replied. You cannot hold water in your hands, but you can feel its flow. We do not try to capture time, but rather move with its current. These conversations began to affect the crew in unexpected ways. Technician Rivers, who had been secretly supplying books, became more confident in his work and began proposing innovative solutions to engineering problems. Dr. Kane started approaching her research with greater creativity and openness to unconventional ideas. Morrison noticed changes in himself as well. The rigid military structure that had defined his career began to feel less important than the pursuit of understanding. He found himself questioning orders from Earth Command, particularly those regarding the aliens' continued confinement. Captain, Kethna said during one of their sessions, you are troubled by something beyond my presence here. Morrison was startled by the aliens' perceptiveness. How did you know? Your species is remarkably expressive, though you try to hide it. Your body language, your tone of voice, even your breathing patterns change when you are conflicted. Morrison found himself sharing his doubts about keeping Kethna imprisoned. My superiors want me to transfer you to a military research facility on Earth. They're calling you a valuable asset. Asset, Kethna repeated the word thoughtfully. Like an object to be owned and studied. The aliens' calm acceptance of this fate made Morrison feel ashamed. Here was a being who had shown them nothing but patience and wisdom, and their response was to treat him as property. There might be another way, Kane interjected. What if we could prove that Kethna poses no threat? What if we could demonstrate that his presence here is beneficial rather than dangerous? Morrison shook his head. Earth Command doesn't care about benefits. They care about control and military advantage. Then perhaps, Kethna said quietly, it is time for you to decide what you care about more, following orders or following your conscience. The words hit Morrison like a physical blow. Throughout his career, he had prided himself on being a soldier who followed orders without question. But Kethna's teachings had awakened something in him that he had long suppressed, the ability to think independently and question authority. That night, Morrison found himself in his quarters, staring at the transmission device that would send his regular report to Earth Command, the report that would result in Kethna's transfer to a facility where his wisdom would be locked away, and his insights used for military purposes. Instead of sending the scheduled report, Morrison made a decision. That would change everything. He composed a different message, one that would challenge the very foundations of human first contact protocols. Earth Command, he began, I am requesting a revision to our current mission parameters. The alien designated as Asset 7 is not a threat to be contained, but a teacher to be respected. I formally request permission to establish diplomatic relations with the entity now known as Kethna of Proxima 7. As he prepared to send the message, Morrison realized that Kethna had been right about human contradictions. They wrote about freedom and dignity while keeping a philosopher in a cage. They spoke of seeking truth while hiding from uncomfortable questions. It was time to choose which version of humanity they wanted to be. The escape. That wasn't response from Earth Command arrived within hours, and it was exactly what Morrison had expected. The message was brief and unambiguous. Transfer Asset 7 to Military Research Station Beta 9 immediately. Any delay will result in court-martial. Admiral Harrison. Morrison stared at the order, feeling the weight of his career and the lives of his crew pressing down on him. Disobeying a direct order from Earth Command was tantamount to treason, but following it felt like a betrayal of everything he had learned from Kethna. He called an emergency meeting with his senior staff, but before he could speak, alarms began, blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as the automated voice announced a containment breach in Cell Block 7. "Impossible," Kane gasped. "The energy barriers are still active. I checked them myself an hour ago." Morrison rushed to the containment area, his crew close behind. When they arrived, they found the cell door open, and Kethna standing calmly in the corridor, his hands empty and his posture non-threatening. "How did you ... Morrison began, then stopped. The question was irrelevant. If Kethna had wanted to escape, he clearly could have done so at any time. "I thought it was time to remove the barrier between us," Kethna said simply. Physical and metaphorical barriers often serve the same purpose. They create the illusion of safety while preventing genuine connection. Security Chief Rodriguez stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "Captain, we need to secure the prisoner." "No," Morrison said firmly. "Stand down." The crew looked at him in shock. Morrison had never directly contradicted security protocols before, especially not in a crisis situation. "Captain," Kane whispered urgently, "if Earth Command finds out we allowed the alien to roam free ... then we'll deal with those consequences," Morrison replied. "But I won't treat a feeling being like a criminal for the crime of being different." Kethna moved slowly toward the observation deck, his movements deliberate and peaceful. "Captain Morrison, may I show you something?" Morrison followed, his crew trailing behind in a mixture of fear and curiosity. When they reached the large viewport that looked out into space, Kethna gestured toward the stars. "What do you see?" the alien asked. "Space," Morrison replied, confused by the question. "I see possibility," Kethna said. "Infinite worlds, infinite. Life forms, infinite opportunities for understanding and growth. Your species stands at the threshold of joining a galactic community that has waited centuries for you to be ready." Kane stepped forward. "You're saying there are others? Other intelligent species?" "Thousands," Kethna confirmed. "But they have been waiting for humanity to overcome its fear of the unknown. My mission was to evaluate whether your species was ready for that contact." The revelation hit the crew like a shockwave. They weren't dealing with a crashed alien explorer. They were facing humanity's first test for admission to a galactic civilization. "And what's your evaluation?" Morrison asked, though he dreaded the answer. Kethna turned to face them, his alien. "Features somehow conveying both sadness and hope. Your species shows remarkable potential. You have individuals capable of great wisdom, compassion, and growth. But you also have systems that suppress these qualities in favor of fear and control." Webb stepped forward. "What happens now? Will you report back to your people?" "That depends," Kethna replied, "on what you do next. I have been sending daily reports to the Galactic Council through quantum transmissions. They have been observing how you treat a peaceful visitor who poses no threat." Morrison felt his stomach drop. "And what have you been telling them?" "The truth," Kethna said simply. "That some humans are ready to join the galactic community, but your governing structures are not. That you have individuals capable of wisdom and growth, but systems that punish those who question authority." The implications were staggering. Earth Command's order to transfer Kethna to a research facility wasn't just a betrayal of moral principles. It was potentially dooming humanity's chance at joining a galactic civilization. "What can we do?" Kane asked desperately. Kefna smiled, the first time they had seen such an expression on his alien features. You can choose to be the humans your philosophers write about, rather than the ones your governments create. You can decide that wisdom is more valuable than control, that understanding is more important than fear. Morrison looked at his crew, seeing the same realization in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had been given a choice that would define not just their own futures, but the future of humanity itself. The question was, were they brave enough to make the right choice? The choice that changed everything, the weight of the decision pressed down on Morrison like a physical force. Around him, his crew waited in tense silence, each understanding that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but possibly the fate of all humanity. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, Earth Command is expecting confirmation of the transfer within the hour. Morrison nodded, his mind racing through the options. They could follow orders, transfer Kethna to the military facility, and continue their lives as if nothing had changed. But they would know that they had chosen fear over wisdom, control over understanding. Kethna, Morrison said finally, if we refuse to transfer you, what happens to my crew? The alien's expression was compassionate but honest. Earth Command will likely charge you with treason. Your careers will be destroyed, your freedom forfeit, and if we do transfer you, humanity will have failed its first test. The Galactic Council will mark your species as not ready and postpone contact for another century, perhaps longer. Dr. Kane stepped forward. There has to be another option. There is, Kethna replied, but it requires courage that your species has rarely shown. You must choose to publicly reveal what you have learned here. You must tell your people that first contact has already occurred and that humanity's response will determine its future. Morrison laughed bitterly. They'll never believe us. And even if they do, Earth Command will have us arrested before we can say another word. Not if you broadcast to everyone simultaneously, Webb interjected, his engineering mind already working on the technical aspects. We could use the quantum communication array to send a message to every colony, every ship, every settlement in human space. Rivers nodded excitedly. And we could include recordings of our conversations with Kethna, proof that he's intelligent and peaceful. It would be career suicide, Rodriguez pointed out. Maybe, Morrison said, feeling a strange sense of calm settling over him. But it would also be the right thing to do. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Prometheus worked together to prepare humanity's first honest first contact announcement. Kane compiled their sessions with Kefna into a comprehensive report. Webb and Rivers worked on the technical aspects of the broadcast. Rodriguez, despite his reservations, helped coordinate the timing to ensure maximum distribution. Kefna assisted by providing additional context about the Galactic Council and the tests that other species had undergone. His presence was no longer that of a prisoner, but of a consultant and friend. You know, Kane said during a brief break, I've learned more about humanity in the past few weeks than in my entire career as a scientist. That is often the way, Kefna replied. We see ourselves most clearly when viewed through the eyes of others. As the broadcast time approached, Morrison felt the familiar weight of command, but now it was tempered by something he had never experienced before, the certainty that he was making the right choice, regardless of the consequences. Attention. All human colonies and vessels, Morrison began, his voice being transmitted across light years of space. This is Captain James Morrison of the research vessel Prometheus. I am about to share information that will change our understanding of our place in the universe. What followed was a detailed account of their encounter with Kethna, complete with recordings of their philosophical discussions and the aliens' explanations of galactic civilization. Morrison spoke of the choice facing humanity and the importance of choosing wisdom over fear. The response was immediate and varied. Some colonies praised the crew's courage. Others condemned them as traitors. Earth Command issued arrest warrants within hours, but something unexpected happened. Scientists, philosophers, and ordinary citizens began speaking out in support of a Prometheus crew. Peaceful demonstrations erupted on dozens of worlds, with people demanding that their governments reconsider their approach to first contact. The galactic community took notice. Within days, ships from a dozen different species arrived at the edge of human space, not as invaders, but as potential allies waiting to see how humanity would respond to its first real test of character. As Morrison watched the stars from the observation deck, Kethna joined him. "Do you regret your choice?" The alien asked. Morrison considered the question. His career was over, his future uncertain. But he had learned something invaluable about himself and his species. "No," he said finally. "For the first time in my life, I'm proud of the choice I made." Kethna's smile was warm and genuine. "Then humanity may be ready for the stars after all." In the weeks that followed, the crew of the Prometheus became reluctant. Celebrities and heroes to some, traitors to others. But they had accomplished something unprecedented. They had shown that humans were capable of choosing wisdom over fear, understanding over control. The cage that had held Kethna became a symbol of humanity's capacity for growth and change. And in the end, it was humanity itself that had been freed.